Hey everybody, and welcome to the PlantStock channel. Jesse here, and today we have a very special guest. We have Elysabeth Alfano, who is the CEO of the VegTech ETF. Welcome to the channel.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here.
I thought, first of all, like most people know, this is a channel where we focus on plant-based companies and stocks. And overall, a lot of you have actually been asking now for a little over a year, is there a vegan ETF? There's been some similarities out there, but not like a pure play, my understanding is. So now you have a chance to get a lot of information about that. So I thought before we just start talking about that, maybe you could tell us a little about your background.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I know we've worked out dates in the past and we couldn't find one that really worked. So it's great to finally be here. And thank you for all you do. Yes. So my background is I've been a plant based business expert, gosh, since about 2016. I do an enormous amount of public speaking on the general trends of the industry. I recently spoke at the United Nations, which was an honor and very exciting. I also have a company called Plant Powered Consulting. I consult with a lot of brands, large and small, on navigating the plant based landscape. And that can be anything from marketing and PR to really the overall strategy of this dynamic industry. And it's from here, with my background in trends analysis, trends overview, and the brass tacks of some business consulting, that I really felt that there was a white space, a complete lack of the ability for those who are really moving the needle on consumption. The average person who buys a plant-based burger is, 28 years old or something. That's not a statistic. That's just a generalization. But, it's Gen Z and millennial. We know this for sure, who's driving plant-based consumption. And
Right.
they can't participate in venture capital investing. Venture capital, just for those who maybe don't know, it's investing in private companies. Usually the minimum is $50,000. And for that to make sense, you have to drop $50,000 at least 20 times so that you have a portfolio that, your odds of one of them hitting it big makes the numbers all make sense. Well, that's very hard for, the 28, 24, or 18-year-old who's, really believes in plant-based as they should. So I felt that there was this huge hole for a plant-based vegan ETF. And all of my industry knowledge and expertise, I also host something called the Plant-Based Business Hour, which is a podcast just like this.
I think I
And
have it here. I'm showing it here to everyone. Plant-based
great.
business hour is you just go for Elysabeth Alfano here, and yeah, she's done over like 600 videos. So take a look at this channel for sure.
Yeah. So, and these are not my words. It's what someone else kindly said, that it's considered the gold standard in plant-based business. So I'm so deep into this business arena that I just felt this is an obvious hole. There's an obvious demand. And if no one else is going to do it, then I guess it's going to be my partner, Dr. Sasha Goodman, and myself.
Yeah, I've actually talked to Sasha Goodman, or well, he's commented a couple of times on the channel,
He's a fan.
yeah, I'm a fan of you guys too, for sure.
Oh,
And actually, maybe it doesn't have that much to do with it, but I actually seen a lot of famous people you've spoken to in the vegan community, like Dr. Greger, who's like a personal hero of mine. I actually have his book here, How Not to Die. Uh, that's one of my favorite books with him. And
yeah.
I mean, he's done so much for the whole community and the whole health space. And then I actually think I saw that you've interviewed Ethan Brown, the CEO of Beyond Meat. That's
Yes, I
amazing.
have. Yeah, very exciting. I'll send everyone, go to the Plant-Based Business Hour. You can find that podcast on iTunes, or even on going to ElysabethAlfano.com. You'll find the Plant-Based Business Hour podcast. So something very fun and exciting, some little tidbits on both of those people. So Ethan launched the Beyond Meat plant-based sausages in my kitchen. So the next day, after being on my podcast and frying up some sausages in my kitchen, the sausage was going to debut in Chicago, and then from there go national, and there was the press party, etc.
Yeah.
But because I'm originally from Chicago and at the time was working with WGN Radio, and we knew that the interview would be out in Chicago on WGN Radio, we did a pre-launch interview eating the sausages with Ethan, who's like 6'4". He's huge, in my kitchen frying up the sausages. So it was a beautiful moment for me. And a beautiful human being. If you listen to that interview, he talks about why aren't we investing in alternative proteins like we're investing in alternative energy. And I think the comparison is quite relevant,
Yeah.
because of I'm sure we'll talk about it, but the deleterious effects of animal agriculture on the planet, and how we don't have time to waste if we're going to mitigate our impact on land, water,
Right.
deforestation, etc. So he just makes some fabulous points in that interview.
Awesome. Yeah, I wanted to ask you what kind of person he is, but you kind of told us there, so that's good.
Can I say one more thing now about Dr. Greger? I mean, I know I'm supposed to be talking about my own ETF, and I will, but I really suggest everyone go Google Dr. Greger speaks to the USDA. If you haven't heard his 3-minute talk, he reads them the Riot Act on how processed meats are a leading cause of lifestyle diseases.
Right.
They're rated as a class 1 carcinogen. You wouldn't send your kids into a plane with secondhand smoke, which has the exact same percentage of risk of cancer that a bologna sandwich has.
Right.
So they both, he's not saying that processed meats are like smoking a cigarette, but he is saying it's the exact same as being in a room with secondhand smoke. You have 15 to 16% chance more cancer if you do that. So he's saying, why are you sending your kids off with a bologna sandwich to school when you wouldn't put them in a secondhand smoke scenario? So, and he lets the USDA have it. It is an eloquent 3 minutes, and I highly recommend it.
Wasn't he even in front of Congress or something like that at one point?
I sure hope so, because no one can make the facts like he can.
No, because I remember also when it came to, was it 6-7 years ago, Oprah Winfrey, when she, what's his name? I forgot, Lyman, or the guy who was in Cowspiracy.
Yes.
The agriculture or a cow farmer who had become vegan and basically said on the Oprah show that beef is terrible for you, and she basically said that she wouldn't eat beef again. And the beef industry, they took in, they actually took in her into court, and she was there for years and years. And Dr. Greger actually had to witness for her, I think, that it's true that the beef isn't very is very healthy, and she ended up winning, but she still lost a lot of millions of dollars in litigations.
Yeah, she actually moved the whole show, which was filming in Chicago, to Texas because it was going on so long. And probably some of I don't know the arguments that Dr. Greger was making, but just for those who might not follow, why would beef be so bad for you? It's that it has things, again, go to Dr. Greger, he's the doctor, but it has trimethylene and oxide, it has animal heme, it has cholesterol, it has no fiber. I didn't know this about me myself. Meat has no fiber, which is shocking because it's fibrous, right? It looks like it has fiber. It has no fiber, and then it has antibiotics and hormones. So, a saturated fat, not in addition. Now, a plant-based burger is not going to have boatloads of fiber, depending on, which kind you get. If you get a bean burger, it's something else. But let's just go with Beyond Meat. It's not going to have boatloads of fiber, but it's going to have some. It's going to have a little bit less saturated fat, but mostly it's not going to have animal heme, trimethylene and oxide.
Yeah, no cholesterol.
And hormones. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and I'm guessing then from everything you're saying here that you're plant-based yourself. I'm guessing 100% plant-based.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, when you know the facts, you wouldn't go back. No. And when you have tasty options, you just wouldn't go back. So. Yeah.
I was a vegetarian for 10.5 years, and I've been a vegan basically 10 years now. So I haven't eaten meat for over 20 years. And when I went fully vegan about 10 years ago, I mean, there was options coming up there, but nothing compared to today. Today, there's a smorgasbord of things out there.
Yes, and you really get to choose the health spectrum. You can have like your vegan ice cream, so you can go like, hey, it's Netflix night, I'm digging in, and damn the torpedoes kind of thing. Or there's super tasty, healthier options too. There's a whole spectrum of plethora of choices. I worried, like, towards the beginning of COVID, I thought, like, okay, people are finally getting it because COVID, what a disruption to our lives. They're finally getting the connection between our food supply system and our health.
All right.
They want to be healthy. They want to be strong against COVID. They're hearing how the pandemic, is coming to us through food and our proximity to animals. And of course, it's not just COVID, right? It's mad cow disease, Asian bird flu, African swine fever, Ebola. These are all zoonotic diseases, animal-borne diseases. So people are getting that message. And I thought, if they only think that their options are Impossible Burger and Beyond Meat, it's not enough to shift the global food supply system. This is one of the ideas that ultimately led to the research of the ETF. We wanted to show people that there's more out there, not just in the CPG, the consumer product goods at the end of the product cycle, but up and down the supply chain, which is why in our ETF there's 40 companies up and down the supply chain that are innovating with plants to create animal-free products for sustainable consumption.
Yeah.
And the more we drive capital to these creative industries, the more products we have, the more we shift the global food supply system. It's really very rewarding.
Exactly. So I was going to ask you, how long have you been investing yourself?
Oh, gosh. So venture investing, I'll say just since 2018, because it does have such a high threshold. But personal investing, since my 20s, I'm about to be 55, folks.
Well,
So since my 20s, and really the important thing here is because I'm not the fund manager, I'm CEO of VegTech Invest, which is the advisor to the VegTech Plant-Based Innovation and Climate ETF. EATV, the ticker EATV. So I am the CEO of that, but really Dr. Sasha Goodman is fund manager of VegTech Plant-Based Innovation and Climate ETF.
okay, great, awesome. So, so basically, I'm guessing you've talked a little about it, but we'll go into the specifics again. How did you come up with the idea of a vegan ETF?
Yeah. So I do host this podcast called the Plant-Based Business Hour, and I would get requests weekly. Tell me where to invest. Tell me how to invest. What should I buy? I didn't feel comfortable telling people what to buy. And, we're not doing that on this show either. But the question came up so much and it resonated with me because I've been asking myself the same thing. Like, I don't want to put money into the companies that aren't moving the needle for people, the planet, and animals. My money is an extension of me. I control it. It doesn't control me. I want to use my dollars for change.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people agree with me, millennials and Gen Z specifically, but not only them, because everybody has children and they want a better future for their children. So it's called legacy investing. So I know I'm not alone here. But then when I did the Plant-Based Business Hour and I would get requests weekly for the same goal, I thought, okay, I really need to address these people's questions, and I can't advise them personally. I'm not doing that. So how can I make a product for them where we can all pull our resources together and, invest with our beliefs,
Yeah.
and for profitable return. I mean, they're not dissimilar. So that's how it came to be.
Yeah, I can really resonate with that because that's why I started this channel and when I started investing, because I felt like I used to be very when I was younger, anti-capitalism. I'm a historian and a history teacher, and from my perspective, a lot of the bad things that's been going on around the world, I used to feel that has to do with capitalism, right? With the colonialism connected to making money. But as I've grown older, I've realized that we can't really escape that. It's part of our lives, it's part of our society. And I realized that if you actually start using your money and use capitalism to actually try to make changes in society, then we could actually get something good with that money. So I feel like if I then spend money on things that will change the world and then invest in companies that are changing the world. It started with Tesla. I went in pretty heavy in Tesla. And I know that Tesla is part of your ETF as well. So, and then it became other plant-based companies. Like first it was the Very Good Food Company, which you also have, Beyond Meat, and then more and more companies. I'm not only invested, of course, in plant-based companies, but some of them. And Oatly, of course. I'm half Swedish, and I'm based in Sweden. And Oatly is, as you probably know, like a 3-decade-old company from Sweden. So So that's basically how when investing, I want to be able to sleep at night, even though I want to grow my wealth.
Yeah. So much to comment on there, if I may. First of all, I've already directed everybody, and maybe Jesse has too, to Dr. Greg Ertz and Ethan Brown. Now I'm going to direct you to the creative director at Oatly. If you feel like Jesse does about capitalism and you want to influence it and have it work for you rather than the other way around, which is a concept I'll get into later, you can watch a video online of how in Sweden, the Swedish dairy lobby sued Oatly, which at the time, this is like 7 years ago, at the time, Oatly was like this nothing, little, sleepy, under the radar company. The Swedish dairy lobby goes after them, and having no big marketing budget, they decide to take capitalism, let's talk about this in a second, and turn it on its head and say, well, okay, if you think you're going to beat us up, Goliath, watch little David get crafty. And they published the lawsuit, and they used that as their marketing campaign. No creative behind it. They just said, look how we're getting bullied.
Actually,
and boom, a major brand was made.
I still remember that. I remember where I was working, what school I was working. I remember us talking about it. I think it was 2014, 15, something like that. And I remember that it was so interesting because it's basically because in Sweden they said like milk for humans, not for cows, and that they were really heavy on their commercials that milk isn't healthy. And I remember the CEO Tony Peterson being really in the news saying that like I can get 200 biologists for you now who would tell you that milk isn't for humans. Like it's basically no discussion, which is actually true. But they ended up, because we know the dairy industry and the dairy lobbies, even in Sweden, like in the US, they're quite powerful. So they ended up winning, and they lost, I think in American dollars, they lost like $1 million or 1.5, which was obviously more for them at that time. But it ended up, like everything else, giving them just more commercial. So they just like went crazy after that. So yeah.
It's a beautiful marketing David and Goliath story. And, Google is really getting a big boost from us in this show. Go ahead and also Google Tony Peterson singing the Super Bowl commercial, which was
that's
like
amazing.
an old hipster thing they'd done on YouTube ages before. Again, not putting a lot of creative dollars behind it, but going with ultra quirky, which they've done so well. So from a packaging and branding standpoint, they've just really been smart about, back to capitalism, about how they've addressed capitalism. And the thing about capitalism is, in my perspective, and we will talk about the ETF, folks, we will, but these are just interesting conversations in and of themselves. If you want to change capitalism, you have to play in capitalism.
Yeah, definitely.
Very difficult to change it from the outside, more costly, more time inefficient. So there's a rationale for taking your dollars and using them as an extension of yourself to further your beliefs, to make sure you see the change you want in your lifetime. Very powerful.
Definitely. So, and that's kind of what changed my mind a couple of years ago, that I kind of smelled the coffee that, if I want to be part of changing something, I need to be part of the system and what's going on and making something good of it. So I'm really happy about that. So, okay. So if we then talk about a little about the structure of the portfolio, if I just show the viewers here again, this is your top holdings. It's, well, first of all, if we take a look at right now, like you said, the ticker symbol is EATV, right? EATV.
Yes.
Yes. And where is it trading? Is it in NASDAQ or?
It's on the New York Stock Exchange. And anybody who is on Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, Schwab, Robinhood, all these platforms carry it. So you can even get on your phone, Robinhood, and go find it. Or a lot of people have Fidelity, Schwab, TD Ameritrade.
I think a lot of us in Europe too can actually access it, even here in Sweden. So that's great news. But we can see right now the net assets is almost 3.5 million, 3.44 million at the moment. And it's trading at about $20.86 now. And we look at the performance, I must say, it's actually quite impressive if you're looking up until January, because if you compare with standard plant-based companies, you've been doing quite well in this volatile market. You started out around 24, 25, came up to almost 26, and then it's been a roller coaster as always. And even though, it's gone down, it's nothing compared to most plant-based companies on their own. So this kind of proves the concept. Yeah, but that's kind of proves the concept of it. Sometimes if you want to feel safer, investing in an ETF might be the way to go here.
Yeah, so that was our thought as well. You know, you're diversified against 40 companies, so you're spreading out and mitigating risk. Obviously, the market, January and February, I don't know when this interview will actually come out, but, you know, the first 2 months of the year have been very tumultuous for everybody.
Yeah.
We do feel good that we're holding our own as a new entrant into the marketplace and in a volatile, you know, we're a growth sector. Obviously, we're looking towards the future for secular change in the global food supply system. We know it's coming. I can talk about that in a little bit. We believe it's coming. I'll tell you why in a little bit. But we feel that we've actually been holding our own pretty well. I think the numbers you're quoting, because again, every day it jumps up and down. So you're probably quoting off of a Friday, but if you were to quote off of a Thursday, we would have been like 21 and a half, almost 22. So we've been, you know, depending on the day, really climbing back to be under a 10% down, which is, I know we're like, who talks about like, oh, hooray, only 10% down, but actually compared to the rest of the world, we're feeling pretty good about that. A lot of our companies still are experiencing growth, even in this downtime, so it's very exciting. We are not only small cap, so you might think, well, plant-based companies are all going to be rather small, but there are some very large multinationals that are playing big in this space.
Yeah.
I apologize if I'm repeating myself. I can't remember if we've discussed it already, but you know, we're investing up and down the supply chain. So it's ingredient companies as well as technology and innovation companies, as well as materials. Everybody thinks plant-based, so food, but it's also materials.
Yeah.
And then at the very beginning of the supply chain, you know, you have vertical farming and greenhouses. So it's up and down the whole supply chain. So you have companies like Ingredion, which is really branching out into novel ingredients for cleaner labels and really partnering. This is why some of these multinationals are exceptional, and that they're really seeing the vision of plant-based and what it means for the planet, and helping these smaller brands partner. So I think of AB InBev, which, you know, you might think, oh, okay, Budweiser, what the heck are they doing? But rather than diverting those spent grains, which is how you make alcohol, to animal feed, now that would be just furthering the animal supply chain, right? Trying to make better feed or more efficient feed, which is silly. Let's just get rid of animals, this middleman. So they're not doing that. They're taking those spent grains and using them for alternative proteins, or they're starting to. They're seeing that vision. So as you go down, which is a Swiss company, and they're a flavor and fragrance company, but you see they're partnering with firms to help better texturization. This kind of helping the end product be really great. So you have all these choices way beyond meat and impossible. So there's a lot of infrastructure happening. I think of the really innovative companies like Amyris and Ginkgo Bioworks that are working on precision fermentation, so that you can produce heme that isn't animal heme. You know, and then heme would be an ingredient in plant-based products. So, you know, there's just a lot of creativity here, a lot of growth here, a lot of innovation here, and we think a lot of optimism for the future. I don't know how many people can say that right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you said, basically, given everything that's been going on in the market, the inflation, the fear of the Fed rate hikes, talking about maybe 7 rate hikes this year, and which is actually a good thing eventually, because, you know, fighting inflation, but also historically, normally when the Fed actually starts to hike their rates, basically stocks and companies start doing really well again. So, and then we have the Russian-Ukrainian border situation. It's really not helping anything at all.
No.
And then we have, I don't know if, you know, Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-wing man, going out and saying that that inflation is worse than nuclear war. It's like, that's not going to help matters. So
No, and also the press really loves to drive negative news. So, markets have corrections.
yeah,
That's built in. We all know that.
exactly.
Even I would go to say that it's healthy to have them.
Oh yeah,
So we just think this is a natural sort of correction to get us all in place. It doesn't have us panicked or freaked out in the sense that we're here for the long haul.
yeah,
This is a long term play, and
exactly.
this is our philosophy a growth capture play.
Yeah,
So, if you want to see early growth of this kind of novel technology, think about the iPhone and how quickly we adapted to that and adopted that, I should say. And we're going to look at an adoption curve, we believe, from the consumer that is going to be just as swift.
yeah,
And the reason we believe we'll see this is not just because vegans, vegetarians, and really more importantly, flexitarians, those folks that are working out the meat and working in the plants, even if not 100%. It's not just those people. It's that according to the United Nations, the Food Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, animal agriculture puts out 14.5% of the greenhouse gas emissions.
yeah,
I think it was the Wall Street Journal recently quoted that cattle alone put out 27% of the methane, which is a particular kind of very harsh greenhouse gas. Um, Animal agriculture is the leading cause of deforestation because we're cutting down trees to grow grains for animals,
yeah,
not even giving them to people, grains that have fiber, protein. Instead we're giving food to food. We
yeah,
could so easily just give that food to people, but we're not. We're doing this laborious business equation that is inefficient,
yeah,
and business doesn't like inefficiency. And so industry is also seeing that they need to shift how they run their businesses for a better bottom line as climate change pressures bear down on them. Are we going to see a carbon footprint tax, for example? Will they be held responsible for their greenhouse gas emissions,
yeah.
for their pollution?
What do you think of subsidies? Because I've been saying that for a long time. That I imagine that considering the subsidies that the meat industry and dairy industry have been getting, I mean, when you go to McDonald's and get your original ordinary burger, I'm not talking about the McPlant now, but when you do that, uh, you're not paying the actual price considering the subsidies there. And so I'm wondering in the future, considering the health pandemic and also considering the sustainability issue, I wouldn't be surprised if politicians will be pressured to actually put the subsidies on plant-based food instead.
This is why I like capitalism,
Mm,
because capitalism is, relatively speaking, nimble. Politics aren't nimble.
no.
And I find that government leaders lack vision. They tend to care about wallets more than capitalists do, I see. So I don't know. I speak maybe from a US perspective. You might feel differently in Europe. But I don't know how nimble and fast politicians will be to see the writing on the wall because they face, as you saw in Sweden, really strong meat and dairy lobbies, and they don't want to give up their money.
No.
And politicians don't want to give up being sided with the bigger people who have money. So I
So
don't know that they'll do that. I think that what we'll see is a push for investment into alternative proteins. And I think I'm making big predictions here. I think this will become an issue of geopolitical security. What I mean by that is China just put in their 5-year agricultural plan that they're investing into cultivated meat. Europe's investing into cultivated meat. Canada, Israel, powerhouse in,
mm,
and we have Israeli companies in our fund, powerhouse in alternative protein innovation. So is Singapore. Where's the United States?
mm,
Now, if you aren't controlling the food supply at a global level, I predict wars will be fought over food and water. You aren't a global player.
no.
So I don't know if they'll start subsidizing plants because it's better for people. I doubt they really care about people, but I do think they care about their own power on the planet. And I think governments are going to become very worried about not the race to space, but the race for food.
Yeah. Wow, that makes total sense. That makes total sense, actually. So and I guess it's also kind of because it is related to sustainability too. If we don't actually start changing these things, we could see a whole other form of wars in the future that's related to the environment, that countries that don't basically can't grow food anymore or don't have enough water, they're going to be forced to move into other countries, and they probably won't be opening their doors just like that.
Yeah, I think you're going to have, as the repercussion from climate change migration, you're going to have that same thing according to food.
Yeah.
We saw during COVID how fragile the global food supply system was, how easily it was broken, and how food insecurity is not just an issue in the future, because the UN says we're going from 7.8 billion people to 9.8 billion people.
Right.
But you're not getting more land and you're not getting more water. So you're going to have to create more food with less resources.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just that lands will be flooded. I think it's that people won't have food, and it will be a real concern. And those who do have food, so you see China again investing in alternative proteins, they have a lot of power.
Definitely makes total sense. Great discussion here. So, but if we just then go into, like, do you guys, because a lot of people are really interested in ETFs, I think.
Yes.
also because Kathy Wood has talked a lot about it and her ETF and or ETFs. And do you guys have some certain rules when it, like a maximum percentage? Do you sell off when it reaches a special number? It used to be in the ARK Invest, I think, around 10 or 12%. I think they've changed that though. But do you guys have any rules like that? Because if we take a look at your holdings here, Celsius Holdings, a friend of mine, Emmanuel, shout out to him. He talks about them quite often, and actually just in one of his videos showed that he was drinking it, and it said vegan on it. So, and I can see it's almost 7% in your holdings here, and then we have Oatly at 5% and Beyond Meat almost at 5%. So kind of like, how do you choose a company on what basis, and then the percentage wise there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this question. Thanks for asking it. So we have a screen, and we are looking at and investing in companies that are innovating with plants to create animal-free products for sustainable consumption, period. So you have to be a company that is actively innovating to replace animals. And if you do have any animal products, it has to be really de minimis. So I'll say like Vitasoy out of Hong Kong, they are plant-based milks. That's all they do. They do have a smaller line of teas. I think there is one tea in their line of like many teas that is like a lemon honey. So we're talking really like the minimal of the minimal of the minimal. So, in our world today where animal products are really in everything, including like sugar and things. So, really in everything, we're talking about, you can't have your main product be anything involved with animals.
Right.
This is why, if I may, we talked about it a little bit before, we do have Tesla in our fund.
Yeah.
And a great factoid about Tesla is that Tesla committed early on that they would have no animal leather. Yeah. And as they replaced with a vegan leather, their force in the market made BMW and Mercedes-Benz go to 50% leather. So they're forcing change in the automobile industry. And this is interesting because automobile leather is second only to shoe leather in terms of quantity and then, of course, impact on the environment. Imagine leather tanning. Not great for the environment. Not great. So, the impact on the planet and also the quantity. So when the car industry starts saying, okay, we're going to shift to vegan leather because Tesla did, it's an enormous impact. So that's why they're in our fund, for example. But to answer your questions about percentages, as one can imagine, an ETF is highly regulated by the SEC, and there are rules there. So you're not allowed to own, too much of any one company. So we're constantly monitoring that. And we do have some rules about percentages. Very few can go over 5%. Those that do go over 5%, we make sure we cap them at a certain amount. So we do have some rules, but it's in that respect. But primarily, it's really focusing on the product innovation and what it's there to change.
Yeah. So, and definitely several of these companies are part of that change for sure. I saw Elf Beauty also. I know that's popular.
Love them.
Yeah. So, and I also saw, being Swedish, that you have a Veg of Lund.
Yes.
And that's actually basically where I live. I live about, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 kilometers away from Lund. So that's interesting that you actually have them as well. And then I saw that you have Else Nutrition, which is Baby F, right?
Yep.
And they're doing really interesting things when it comes to toddler food, right?
Yes.
And then the Very Good Food Company, that's been an all-time favorite on this channel. It's been a little negativity regarding what's going on there with the CEO and management. Very little information. I can also see that it's a very small part of the ETF, about 0.35%. But they could, they were basically up more than tenfold from where they're at now, if not 20-fold, just a year ago. And then we have the classics of the channel, which is Beyond Meat and Oatly. So that's actually one, or a couple of my subscribers have been asking about a channel favorite too, or actually a YouTube favorite. And I think I know the answer to it. I think it's quite self-evident. And it has a company called Tattooed Chef. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I have definitely heard about it. I see that it's big on your channel.
Yeah.
And
I'm guessing the straight answer is that it's not actually a vegan company.
It's not vegan.
No.
50% of their companies have cheese.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things we're hoping to do. Again, highly regulated industry. So we've been in the market for 2 months and we've got a lot of papers to file, et cetera. But, as we get our stride, we're hoping to reach out to companies like the Tattooed Chef. Love what they're up to. I love their product line.
Yeah.
I think they do great things. I think there are many vegan cheeses that could easily replace. They're so close.
Definitely.
Please be a part of the solution, not furthering the problem. They're just, like a hair's breadth away from the finish line. If we could see some product replacements there, I'd love to include them in our fund.
Yeah.
So we hope to be, have the time very soon to be reaching out in this kind of, hey, let's have a great dialogue. Maybe I can even help you find a vegan cheese, although I'm sure they've got their fingers on the pulse there. So, I see what they're up to, and too much cheese.
Yeah.
So,
it is actually strange because me and my fiance, we actually invested in them like 1.5 years ago when they came out. It was basically the second largest plant-based company that IPO'd. And we were so excited because we read about it everywhere. Plant-based company. At that time, I hadn't understood basically the terminology of plant-based. So we invested quite heavily at that time. And we were so excited, and that's where you have to learn to do your due diligence, right? Because after we had invested and were super excited, we realized we found out that it wasn't actually 100% plant-based. And we're kind of like in a difficult situation at that time. Like, okay, should we sell? We put in a lot and it's gone down. And we had like these dilemmas, these moral debates, that if you are a vegan and you believe in that kind of diet and what that means for the planet, should you only be part of companies that are 100% plant-based? Or are you a little too extreme in that way? Is it better that you meet halfway? I have a couple of vegan friends from India who are investors too, and invest only in plant-based companies. And when I talked to them, they were like, well, they're still doing something better. They don't have meat. So today I'm off and on. I'm a little confused about that. What I should think. I'm not actually invested in them anymore because I had to make a choice between them and Oatly. Because when Oatly came out, they were at $22, right? And then they flew up to almost $30 back in May. And I told my subscribers that I wanted to invest. I invest like just $5,000 just because I love the company and I've been part of it for basically 10, 15 years here in Sweden, right? But after a few days or weeks, I sold it because I felt like I'm insane, because it just felt like there's no way it's not going to tumble down, because it was so overvalued and so hyped. So we made a small winning, but we didn't really care about that. And eventually, it's gone down to about $6-7, right? And then when it was around 8 a few months ago, I just felt like, well, TTCF, I think is interesting, and I think actually they're going to do good. They're going to do really well in the future, and I'm hoping they'll go 100% plant based. But I couldn't, not even from a investing point of view, it didn't make sense then to keep all of that money in Tattoo Chef when I had Oatly that had actually gone down to such a perfect price to sales ratio. It just made sense. And my fiance is now, she's 7 months or 8 months pregnant soon, and when she starts being at home now in a month from now, our economy is going to change a lot. So we're not going to be able to invest maybe for a year. So I just felt like I have to make this choice then for now. So I sold it off and I put everything in Oatly, because I believe more in that company long term. In the next 5 to 10 years, I believe both companies could do really well. But considering that Oatly is 3 decades old, and the possibilities and their mission is so clear cut, I just felt like no. And I love Tony Peterson as well, so it made sense to me.
Yeah, so much to love there. They're pure play, first of all. You're sweetest, second of all. That one maybe won't apply to everybody here thinking through their decisions, but I love what you're saying about the due diligence you're doing. You're looking at the multiples, the revenue growth, price to sales ratio, these kind of things. I encourage everyone to, of course, do their own due diligence. At least I speak for myself, not telling anyone what to do or what to buy here, just encouraging them to do their own diligence. That's what we do in our ETF, and we like the idea of spreading the risk over the 40 companies. We also like that, one company won't change the world. They have to work in concert.
Definitely.
If you really want to see a shift of the entire global food supply system, which is what we want. We want this because we want animals out of the supply system, but we also want more nutritious food for more people using fewer resources. That's a systems change. And so that's why it was important for us to invest up and down the supply chain. Anyways, you're looking at all the metrics that make so much sense. And of course, everybody investing is a personal choice. So you have to and involves risk.
Yeah.
We should say that. So, everyone's got to make that choice for themselves.
But also philosophy. That it has the right philosophy, because that was a problem for me for the longest time when we found out that they weren't 100% plant-based. And I actually contacted them like a half a year ago, the chef, and asked them, but that's their investor relations people. I don't know if they actually know everything what the CEO thinks, but asked them, do you think that you're going to go 100% plant-based one day? And that person just responded, no. And I kind of I just felt like that's not where the future is going. And but that doesn't mean, of course, just because what that person said, that's not going to happen. Because I think when you see where the money actually goes, I think companies will make changes there as well.
Yes, I do as well. I think you are seeing, we talked about a little bit before, you are seeing a lot of money being spent from governments as well as private business in alternative protein research. So when those alternative proteins become better, so let's say proteins out of fermented microbes and mycelium and these kind of really novel inventions, as these things scale up, become lower in price and really efficient because they don't even require land and water, and just grown in sort of a controlled scenario. It's just you're going to see, we talked about it before, you're going to see rapid change really swiftly because industry is behind and they're investing in this. So these novel technologies are coming out. That's why we want to be early on the growth end of our fund. We see what's coming down the pipeline in terms of investment, and it's all public information. You can see this yourselves if you're Googling. So we know the investment that's happening now, therefore the changes that are coming down the pipeline. And, business rewards efficiency. And so our food supply system is wildly inefficient for the reasons that we've spoken about. And so adoption will be fast from the industry perspective, which means soon you'll see commercials about how manly it is to eat plants.
Yeah.
And then you'll see just mainstream consumption.
Have you interviewed one of my heroes also, Esselton? What's his Rip Esselton?
Oh, yes, I have.
Yeah,
I have.
I love that guy. He became my hero almost 10 years ago when he enforced over on ice, and he's like a former firefighter, right? And when he's kind of like climbing up that pole, right, from the and real men eat plants. Yeah, I thought that was inspired. So
yeah. I love it. I interviewed the folks from the Game Changers as well. You probably know that movie.
Yeah.
So I love that, really turning on its head. This conversation has taken a different toll, but turning on its head this concept of what it means to be manly. And I just, even maybe the word manly is like outdated. I don't know, folks. So, I'm not trying to go down that path, but just trying to say, really breaking stereotypes and, being strong means being healthy.
Yeah.
So can't do that on meat and dairy. But anyway.
Exactly. Now, I was going to actually end this with asking, and I'm guessing we're actually talked about this in many ways now. Like, where do you see vegan investing in the next decade and vegan companies? And I'm guessing you see it where I see it too. That it's I don't know how you would want to finish that off.
Yeah. I see it, and I predict from all of our research and from all that I do in the plant-based business landscape that the shift will be really quickly and it will be ubiquitous, meaning across the board. I think in my lifetime, so let's say the next 30 years, you will see that animal proteins are less than 50% of the entire meat market, and that it's plant-based, fermented proteins, and cultivated meat that takes up the majority of the sector. But one could argue, let's not listen to what Elizabeth says. I think you can listen to JBS and Maple Leaf and Smithfield and Cargill, all meat companies that are investing heavily in alternative proteins. The CEO of Cargill, I'm forgetting his name, last June, that's June of 2021, said that he predicted that plant-based meat, alternative meats, would be 10% of the meat category within 3 years. And that's the CEO of Cargill. They've changed their name from a meat company to a protein company, ultimately saying, we don't really care what we feed you. We just want to make money off of feeding you. Yeah. And if you guys are all switching to plants, we are too. So we're protein suppliers, not meat suppliers. So I think when you see industry indicators like that, coupled with climate change pressures and consumer interest and consumer empowerment, people feel pretty strongly about their food, where it comes from, what they want it to stand for, that it has to be planetary health as well as personal health, as well as animal health. You have a perfect storm. So I think it's going to happen quickly in my lifetime. And I would say shorter than my lifetime, like the next 10 years. Even like the next 5 years, I think you're going to have really mainstream adoption. Won't be 50% in 5 years. I'm not saying that. But palpable mainstream adoption and growth, which is what we launched when we did.
And that's what I like is one of the largest investments firms or banks in the world, which basically they take care of trillions of dollars, Credit Suisse from Switzerland. They came out with a report saying that right now the global meat industry is like we know Beyond Meat is attacking that, and Impossible Foods as well. It's about $1.4 trillion. They suspect that in the next 20 to 30 years, that's what the plant-based meat industry or plant-based food industry is going to be worth. So that's kind of gives you a whole nother, thought there, what could happen in the next 20, 30 years. But even like you said, in 5 to 10 years, it's going to happen a lot.
And think of those investment opportunities. So we all think of plant-based as like, Beyond Meat on the shelf. But then there's all that industry supporting. So, if you're looking at cultivated meat, you're looking at making all those bioreactors at a large scale. You're looking at ingredients at a large scale. You're looking at novel technologies in fermented proteins and those companies that are patenting those to have, growing plant-based fat, let's say, or I guess you call it animal fat, really, but out of the not in the animal. Hold on, let me start again. Let me give the example for those who don't know what fermented proteins might be. Right now, on the shelf today, you can buy Brave Robot ice cream, which you can in the U.S. Brave Robot ice cream. What they do is they take the genes from an animal. They don't even get them from an animal. They get them from a science database. They're all over the world, and these genes exist in databases. They take those genes, and for lack of a better expression, they map them onto a microbe. That microbe reads the gene like a cliff notes to a book. And they say, oh, I get what you're doing here. You want me to follow this guideline. So reading the genes, the microbe starts to produce the same gene it would if it were in an animal, which in this case is animal casein. You feed that microbe water and sugar. This is why it's a plant-based technology. It's the microbe, which is a small part of it, is feeding on these sugars with amino acids and other things. So it grows the casein you need. The casein is the animal protein in ice cream and milk, etc. Then you add fat, you add sugar, and hey, you've got ice cream. But it didn't come from an animal. That's precision fermentation. No land, no water, no animal. And when you say no animal, that means no antibiotics, no hormones, no pandemic issues. I mean, really, the ramifications are huge. That's on the shelf today. Now, you're going to see this go really large scale. That's where a lot of the venture capital money is being spent in ameliorating, fine-tuning precision fermentation. You are going to see cheese. It's a major complaint. It's like even a problem for the tattooed chef. It's a complaint that vegan cheese isn't there yet. You're going to see, by the end of 2022, you'll see very small public sampling. So by 2023, you will see on the shelves cheese without the cow. It's groundbreaking.
Yeah. Wow. That's going to be amazing. That's going to be huge. Wow.
Can't wait. Cool. So glad I'm living through it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why sometimes people say, like, oh my God, the news is so bad around the world. And I say, well, come on over to the plant-based sector because we got good news all day long. Yeah. I mean, it's exciting to be thinking that we are living through this moment in history. I do believe, I don't know how old you are, Jesse, but
45.
You're 45. Okay. So you're going to remember this. I used to live in France. I would walk onto an airplane. It would be filled with smoke. I think the pilot was even smoking. Imagine if you walked on today onto a plane with a cigarette in your hand. They would take you off to jail. It would be completely unacceptable. I think that's what it's going to be like to say, oh yeah, I'm eating animals. And people are going to say, really? You're polluting our land and our water? Really? You're cutting down our trees? Really? You're locking them in a factory farm on cement? It's just not going to be tolerated.
No, I think that makes sense. I've always believed that, kind of like what Da Vinci was, Leonardo da Vinci 500 years ago, who was a vegetarian. He said that in the future we'll look at the slaughter of animals basically as murdering people. So, not paraphrasing 100% there, but yeah.
You see the knowledge drop, folks, on Jesse's channel. I did not know that quote. I will go find it. That's a great quote. Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm just learning things every day with you.
Now, I'm really, really happy to have you here on the channel and talking about your ETF. It's really exciting. And I'm hoping we can actually do this again and talk about plant-based investing and your ETF. So that would be really amazing. So
I'm so happy you feel that way because I've had such a fun time here. I was thinking, I wonder if he'll have me back. Yeah, I'd love to talk about this stuff anytime you want. I think the trends and the industry moves are as exciting as the individual companies. Yeah. I know we didn't do deep dives into the individual companies. We can do that, another time if you'd like. So I'll come back anytime. I really had a great time. Thank you.
Super. Thanks a lot. Something you want to end it with when it comes to your ETF?
Sure. If you have questions, come find me on LinkedIn. Just ask me anything if you would like. I'm here to discuss. So is my fund manager, Dr. Sasha Goodman. You can get all the information you need, and please read the prospectus. Please, see the top 10 holdings so that you know. So I want everyone to make an educated decision for themselves. But you can get that at EATV.vegtechinvest.com.
I'll link it.
Dive into it. Beautiful. And ask any questions. I'm around.
All right. Super. Thanks a lot. And I hope to see you soon.
Bye.